And then here, a little bit of drag. And then back to 0. Okay, so that feels good enough for now. And it's a good idea to just make sure all of these curves are cycling, because what we're going to do is copy and paste all the animation from this foot onto this foot. So I'll switch over to the dope sheet, and I'm just going to delete all the animation that I've made for that one foot, because I can now copy and paste it. This is the good foot here. There's the foot that's receiving. So the first thing you're going to see is that it looks a little weird because it's exactly the same time. And that's strange. So we're going to offset all the animation on this one by 12 frames. That's half of the cycle. And now there's still a strangeness because of the way that this is rotated. And to fix that, we're going to have to flip the curves. And the curves that we flip are those same ones, the horizontal group. So I can say times equals -1, and that should invert the curves like so, giving us this sort of a feel. And now I'm going to leave the lower body and move up to the upper body and get that worked out. Okay, so I haven't gotten pretty far along with the lower body. It's a good time to move up to the upper body. And it's good to keep in mind also, what's the anatomy of the character and the design of the character. This guy's in a space costume, so he's probably not going to be very supple. But what we want to try to do is counter whatever's going on in the hips for the locomotion in the upper part of the body. So I'm just going to rotate here slightly the chest, so that when the right hip is forward, the left shoulder is going to be forward, but that's not coming from the arm, it's coming more from what's going on inside the spine. So I save a keyframe for 1 and 25, just as before, because this is all happening on the contact frames, and then the opposite happens here. Same thing happens, getting some opposition in the Z rotation of the hips and trying to get an opposite type of feeling happening there. And probably even just stabilizing him is going to be okay, so he doesn't feel too overly loose. But again, that depends a lot on what the style of the character is. So taking a look here in the graph editor, same type of thing, copy and paste this keyframe here and send it off onto frame 31. Now we can grab all these curves and we can cycle them. I've lost my cycle windows, so I'm going to have to open them up again. Okay, there we go. I'll just move those out of the way. And he feels a little bit too big in the Z rotation. So I'm just going to come back on that a little bit. All right. And we'll do a little bit of overlap. A little goes a long way, so try not to overdo it. Basically, as he's falling forward, just a little bit of drag in the spine. As he's coming backwards, pull them forward like so. And if you want an easy way to find out how to make that cycle complete, one way to do it, I'm just going to remember that this is at frame 10. Bring this all back here to frame 1. So whatever is happening here at frame 1 would also happen at frame 13. Now I can bring this back to frame 10. It's always good to check just by checking that frames 1 and 25 are the same, so when you go back and forth between 1 and 25, there should be no change happening on screen. So there's a little bit of overlap. And now it's probably a good time to just change that to 24 just so you can see how it feels without playing 25, which is the same frame as frame 1, so you're not going to see the same frame twice. Okay. Now going into the head, this should be very, very simple. I just want to correct him so that he's looking forward. Make that 4. Same thing at frame 25. Back to 13, -4. And I'm probably not going to do too much of the Z, maybe not at all, just because it starts to feel a little bit too fluid for a spacesuit. But probably can do a slight amount of overlap with the head. Same thing, so as it's going up, just going to drag the head down a little bit. Whatever's going on at frame 11 will also be at frame 23, pretty sure. And then as he's dropping down there, a little bit of drag on the head. We'll see how that looks. And it's probably just a little bit too much. So we'll back up from that a little bit. Okay, so that's the spine. The last thing to do here, before we've gone through everything, is a little bit of work on the arms. And just like the feet, it's not necessary to do both. We'll just do one and then we can copy and paste. And I'm just going to accentuate the movement that's already working there. Find the forward and back. There it is. And just go a little bit further with the opposite. So if that foot is there, is forward, this arm's going to be forward at the contact frame. Frame 13, just bring it back slightly. Now we've got a little bit of arm swinging. Work down the hierarchy so that we can see what it feels like if the elbow bends. And then it will straighten. It'll stay straight. And we can just try to figure out what that would look like in the cycle. Same technique here. This is frame 6, so I'll try to remember that. And I'll just copy whatever it is here to frame 25. And then I can move this back to frame 6, offsetting this whole cycle and cycling it. Giving us that feeling of drag. I don't like this ever being too flat, just keeping things moving a little bit, even if it's just the slightest little push. We're probably not going to see too much of a difference. And maybe I can make this all a little bit straighter. Okay, and I can finally go into the wrist and work a little bit on the overlap here. So as he's moving forward, a little bit after he started moving forward, give a slight amount of drag to the wrist. And the opposite there. So that's frame 9, and I'm going to try to remember that as I bring all this back to frame 1. Copy and paste. Go back to frame 9 and cycle it. And that just feels a little bit too soft. All right, so the easiest thing here to do is to copy and paste all of these controls onto all of these controls. And that's what's good for the dope sheet. First I want to make sure everything is cycled. Then I can switch over to the dope sheet, copy and select these, and paste. Same type of thing as before. I have to offset all of these curves by half of the cycle. It's 12 frames. And basically we've gone through all the channels that we can. And I often think of it as like a rock band going into the studio and each band member is laying down the tracks, the bass, the guitar. And after everything's recorded, you can go in and do the remix. Try to mix it correctly. And the mix is going to happen on all the different channels here that we see in the graph editor. And that'll probably take about as much time to do as this took. But that's the basic idea of how to get a walk cycle working in real time.